there were some experts that were gathered. A sister Terry Williams, of course, our sister Ava Muhammad, and brother Sekou Frazier. He's out of Dallas. And so it reads, it says, the question can be asked. It was talking about our experience with the transatlantic slave trade and being brought to the shores of America and all of the things that that entailed. The question now is, can love of self be attained in an environment that procures stress, depression, and overall mental strain to a people mistreated by their oppressors, others, and themselves? Experts say, yes, it can. And they offered paths to achieving it. And so one of the first things that comes up when you're dealing with this thing called self-love is mental health. That's a taboo subject among black people. But it's a subject that must and needs to be discussed. So look, mental health in the black community looms towards despair, note some analysts. This despair is the chief opponent to self-love and happiness. Did you get that? Did you get that?
Yes, sir.
We all right?
Yes.
You see how quiet it gets when we start talking about mental health with black people? This is the chief opponent of self-love and happiness. Quite often, blacks, their mental health mirrors their dismal, wide-ranging health, which is unfavorable when compared to whites and others in the U.S. Blacks are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population. So what is it that's going on with us? We are living in the middle of a war zone. Our homes, our neighborhoods are war zones for the most part. You and I are living in an environment that is filled with stress, hopelessness, despair. And so now that develops into what's called post-traumatic stress disorder. You and I look at that from a soldier's perspective coming back from a battlefield. But young black men are on a battlefield daily. So what do you think their minds are looking like today? And they're in this battlefield at 10 and 12 and 14 and 16 years old. So we have to now learn how to deal with these issues to create the love that we need amongst ourselves.
Right.
So I'll just quote my brother for right now for the constraint of time. My brother Sekou Frazier, he says, and it's a very profound thing, we must know who we are to start with. Did you get that?
Yes,
we must know who we are to start with, who we are historically and in our current state. Then we can assess how far we need to travel to better ourselves. The most common mental disorders present among blacks is depression, suicide among young black men, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And so he says young people can be easily made unhappy by measuring themselves to images they receive in social media, in that fast-paced world of social media. If they don't have cars, if they don't have clothes, if they don't have the money they often view from the entertainers, they then become easily depressed and angered. So Mr. Frazier, he says the anger's next stage is a display in violence. statistics show that black children are more likely to be exposed to violence than other children. So he said, I have helped many young black men or young men who are violent and don't know why. Usually we find through talking and journaling that they are disappointed with not knowing their father. And the breakdown of their family structure. He said, he cites the destruction of the black family as a massive problem related to the community's mental health problems. If repaired, he says, it could be one of the greatest solutions providing happiness to those who would otherwise be angered and depressed. And our sister, Dr. Ava Muhammad, she says the family is ideally the microcosm of the society that the human being ultimately will live in. So the family structure that we are living in is a microcosm of what the larger community is or should be. And so by repairing the family unit and by giving the knowledge of self, those are tools to help to overcome mental disorders. Right. Now we get a little tripped out when we think about the word mental disorder or mental illness. And I'll say this, I said it Wednesday night and I said it before. Simply put, because most people when we hear the word mental illness, we are made to think that we are crazy. Mental illness is simply not having the ability, or the ability that we do have has been cut off from being able to make proper and calculated decisions. It leaves us unreasonable.
That's right.
That's it. Doesn't mean you crazy. It just means that things have happened in our lives that has caused us some type of trauma, and that trauma is now laying pressure on our minds to where we are so focused on the trauma and all of the things that has happened to us, a part of our mind is still on the trauma while we are unable to look at life today, right now, and make calculated decisions about the right way to move. That's all mental disorders is or are. So when you and I can get the knowledge of self, that brings us back partially. Then when you and I have a good family structure, then that brings us back partially. But when you start to put all of those things together with the knowledge of God, now you are bringing all of those parts of attention from that human being's mind up until the present, where they can now look at their current situation, they can view their past, and now be able to see where they are, and now focus on where they are going. That's all mental illness is, and how we can actually help to get over those mental illnesses. Of course, there are times when you will need to talk to someone who is a professional. Yes, sir. And that's the part where we lose people sometimes. Because if I have to go see a professional, then that means I'm crazy.
That's right.
No, it just means you got to go see a professional.
That's right.
If your body is ill, don't you go see a professional?
Oh, bro. That's right.
If you need some legal services, don't you go and see a professional? We know about people who try to be their own lawyers, and where most of the time where they wind up, right? Locked up. So when you and I are in need of a service that we are not able to take care of on our own, then we seek the help of a professional in that particular field so that they can help us. We should just want help, people. So self-love is the key.
That's
right. Self-love is the key. And yes, black people can love themselves. So I thank you, family. I know that's a tough subject, man. But it's one that we really need to have a discussion on. We really do. And so I thank you for allowing me to come before you, and I leave you as I came before you with the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. And at this time, family, I would like to bring up the New Orleans representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, our student minister, Willie Muhammad. Let's give him a round of applause, family.
In the most holy name of Allah, who appears to us in the person of Master Farrakhan Muhammad, we thank Almighty God Allah for his coming, and we thank Almighty God Allah for his raising up in our midst the most humble and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We also thank Almighty God Allah for he and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad seeing it fit to leave us with one who we say is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I thank Almighty God Allah for each and every one of you all, those who are here today in this physical building, Muhammad Mosque number 46, and even those who are watching live via webcast from Facebook streaming. We thank you all, and we pray that what you hear today that you find it to be beneficial, and you find it that you can actually use it and implement it. And we greet you all with the greeting words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum. So first, give Brother Lawrence and Sister Michonne a round of applause for And as I said always, we thank each and every one of you all. You know, as I always mention, there's always something that's going on. And you know, today is a pretty day, and you may have had that inclination to say, let me go to the park and feed ducks or something, right? I walk in the park holding the hand of my special one, my boo or their baby, whatever the names may be in this day and time. But I thank you for being here today. And as I said, as I always say, I pray that what we talk about, that you find it to be beneficial. One of the things that I'm not interested in is standing before people just for applause. You know, I really try to prepare in such a way that the message is clear and it's also practical, and it's also that we can take it and implement it in our lives. I mentioned several weeks ago how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was told by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said to tell the believers, or he told the minister, I didn't send you to New York so that you can just sit and hear the believers' problems over and over and over. That's not that he was saying that I want you to be concerned about their problems. He said, but remember, I sent you there to teach Islam. And he told the minister, and he said that if you teach Islam properly, they will be able to solve their own problems. Yes, now you think about that. And as I think about that, that goes right in accord with what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches in this book about our power and about who we have descended from. We've come from God. And one of the powers that God has given each and every one of us is the ability to say, be and it is. Right? In fact, it's our misuse and our improper understanding of how to use that power that has most of our lives in the condition that they are in today. Right? We've been using being it is, but we haven't been using it properly, right? So we want to speak a message that will help us gain a better understanding so that we can refine our practice of this be and it is. So the title of today's lecture is A Message to Single, Courting, Married, and Divorced Believers. And this lecture was a lecture that I did several years ago. But just in my conversations that I often talk with people about relationships, about male and female relationships, especially if you're on social media, the stuff that you see on social media, I thought that this would be something that we can do again. And I'm thinking about doing a series that deals with family, that deals with relationships, that deals with marriage, and we may even do one solely dealing with just divorce. Because we need it. Because it's a significant, marriage and relationships is a significant part of our lives, right?
Yes, sir.
You can be in a relationship and everything is going good and you feel like you can be broke, but you're still happy.
Yes.
You got somebody to love you, right? So what we have to understand is that if we do not focus on marriages and families, our nation will not be as strong as it would need to be. Our communities would not be as strong as it would need to be. In a lecture that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did on July 30, 2006, he said the following. And the title of that lecture is, Our Commitment to Strong Marriage Secures Our Nation. The minister says, there is no success in building a nation without the building of family. There is no success in the building of family without the respect and honor for the institution of marriage. However, we are beset with divorce and the problem of infidelity. And he says, as a result of divorce and infidelity, hatred is building between mothers and fathers, which is causing children to suffer. He goes further, he says, we can talk about many things that are important in life, but nothing is more important or sacred than family and the cornerstone of family, which is marriage. Right. Now the minister was getting ready, he delivered this lecture at a time where there was this huge Middle Eastern international crisis. And everybody came to the mosque in Chicago waiting to hear what the minister had to say about this international issue. But instead, the minister chose that time to talk about marriage and family, right? He goes on, I want to repeat this statement. He says, we can talk about many things that are important in life, but nothing is more important or sacred than family and the cornerstone of family, which is marriage. Nothing is more important, nothing is more sacred. So with that being the case, we sitting here should use his statement to serve as motivation for us to work to begin to start gaining knowledge and developing the necessary skills that will help you and I treat marriage as being something sacred and being something important, right? So I decided to do this lecture again and expand it for those who are not per se in the Nation of Islam, so that you and I can still hear something from this message and implement it in your life.
That's right.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan went on to say, I want to see successful marriages in the Nation of Islam and outside the Nation of Islam among black people. Now, if you read this Bible, right, and I know many people talk about throw away the Bible, this is a false book. And somebody's saying recently, they were talking about, show me where these prophets are buried at. You can't find where any of them are buried at. And I was having a conversation with somebody. I said, one of the things I would ask someone, show me where Amenhotep is buried at. The man who said to build the pyramids. They don't know where he's buried. Show me where Hannibal is buried at.
That's right.
Who invaded Rome, is that right? Or Italy. Show me where your great-great-great-grandmother is buried at. I don't know where she is, but I know the fact that I'm here, she had to exist. So we can't allow these social media scholars or YouTube scholars to cause us to throw out a book that's filled with wisdom. What we need is the real understanding of this book.
Yes, sir.
But in the very opening of this book, the very first attack of the devil was on family.
Yes, sir.
The very first attack of the devil was he interfered with the relationship between a man and a woman in their obedience to God.
That's right.
And then thereafter, everything that took place after that in the Bible is all chaos and disorder. But it all started with the disruption of the family and their relationship to God. And then for Muslims, in our problem book, in our lessons, when in our 34 problems, the first 2 problems deal with a man and a woman who are husband and wife, and they are in a horrible condition. But why does it begin with the situation of a husband and a wife, and then everything else is in a horrible condition? Because God is trying to let us know that when you corrupt the family, when you disrupt the family, you also do the same to society. So there's an African proverb that says the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its families, right? So we're going to go into this and talk more about this. Now, I could have just did a lecture solely on marriage, But we're going to start off talking about single people,
Come on.
those who are courting, those who are married, and those who are divorced.
That's right.
You may say, well, why are we dealing with all of that? We're dealing with it in that way because many of the problems that threaten our marriages and cause our marriages to end, they start before we get married.
Come on, man.
Say that again.
Right.
Many of the things that end up sucking the life out of our relationships and out of our marriages, we suffer from them when we are single. I did a research on what they consider to be the top causes of marriage failure. There were like 9 of them. But look at what the top 3 are. Money issues, poor communication, and lack of commitment. People who have a bad habit of handling money, they were like that when they were single. People who have negative ideas or views about money, we were like that when we were single. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
As it relates to poor communication in our lessons, it says that the average man speaks 400 words considerately well, right?
Well, that's right.
400 words. Do you know that they are estimating that just in the English language alone, there's almost 1 million words?
Go ahead.
So if we only speak 400 considered well, then you automatically know there's a communication issue. We're going to misunderstand one another,
That's right.
right? We're going to use words that don't mean what we think they mean.
That's right.
Then it says a lack of commitment. When you find people who are non-committal, they can't keep their word, they can't honor their engagements, that didn't start when they were married. They were like that when they were single. But what happens is we get caught up in this false understanding of love. And oftentimes we engage in a sexual act so fast that it dilutes or it causes us to be intoxicated where we overlook or we minimize those problems
Go ahead. Come on, man.
that they have and also that we have, right? And then we go through life bringing it into one relationship after another relationship, never accepting any responsibility, and then we get married, and by this time, that little issue has gotten even worse.
That's right.
And it leads to the death of our marriages, right?
That's right.
Now, I'll share a personal experience with you. When I was single, I used to have to cook for myself, and one of the things that I would have for desserts, I don't know if you ever saw these little Debbie cakes. They're white with the little chocolate sprinkles on them.
Oh, yeah.
So anything I ate, I had to have that as dessert, right? So a brother of mine, Brother Gilbert, he and I were single, so we would often like leave the house and go to his mother home, and she would always have some meal ready. But I would stop. One time I stopped, and I said, man, let me stop in the store, I need to get something. So here I'm going to these people's home to eat dinner, and I brought 1 Debbie cake.
One.
There was 1 packet that had 2 in it. And so his mother, very wise older woman, she said, Brother Willie, oh, thank you for bringing one of those cakes to share with us. Now, that was not my intention. Now, she came between me and my love for this little Debbie cake.
That's right.
But the point she was trying to teach me is that as a man, especially when you're going to someone else's home, you should think about others. And I kind of got that lesson, but I didn't fully understand it, and I still brought a little of that to my marriage. Where sometimes I would go to the store and just get one thing and come home, my wife was like, well, what about everybody else? But you see how that did not start when I was married. I always had that issue. So we need someone to tell us and point out things in us so we know, man, I can't bring this into this next relationship. So this is why the process of self-improvement, brothers and sisters, is so important. This process is essential to our development, right? Think about when you all came here. You submitted to a check procedure. And now you can sit in this environment and you don't have to worry about anybody having weapons because you know that if they had them, they were not allowed to bring them here, right?
Yes, sir.
So you and I need to begin to start setting up some type of check procedure in our own mind, in our own spirits, in our own personalities, so we can prevent bringing the things that the world has given to us or conditioned us or transformed us into, that we don't bring that into our next relationships. So the process of self-improvement is essential, and it is very important for a single person who desires to get married. It's important for all human beings, but we're focusing on those who are single. Listen to what the minister said. He said, prior to courting, and I'll explain that later, you must have done work on yourself before you truly set out to seek a mate. How you choose is heavily influenced by your self-concept, which is tied 100% to your concept of God. You and I select mates based upon the level of our self-esteem and self-worth. And we may not realize that. We may settle for someone that's less than deserving of us because that's how we feel about ourselves. And we have been living for so long not seeing ourselves as something as valuable that we don't even realize that we're walking around with an assessment of ourselves that's lower than what God has of us. So we bring someone into our life, we attract people that treat us the way that we value ourselves. And if we are lucky to bring somebody into our lives that value us more than we value ourselves, guess what we do to that relationship? We sabotage it. We start looking and see, well, what's his angle? What's her angle? She keep always talking about how handsome I am. She just want my money. He always saying nice things about me. He just like the other ones in the past. And so we look for a way to validate that I don't need to be with him because he is not treating me how I really feel about myself. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says this about the self-improvement process. He says each study session is designed on the guidance of Allah to produce self-examination, self-analysis, self-correction, and to quicken in each of us the self-accusing spirit. He says, well, it is only when we are awakened morally that we have to face the self-accusing spirit, which leads to our resurrection. Yes, it's only when you and I begin to examine ourselves, not because someone else asked us to, because we want to. Where we begin to get into self-analysis, that now we're beginning to start really being spiritually alive. There's some people who can do dirt to some other folks and it doesn't bother them at all. And they go to sleep peacefully. Because they're not thinking about the harm that they're doing to somebody else, right? So as single believers and individuals, I would highly encourage those who are single to use this process to help prepare yourself for marriage. Sometimes we don't do that. We get married and now we want to start working on ourselves. And what's so dangerous about that, that process might produce a new you that does not fit the person that you said, I do to. Because they married the person who wore a mask and who had a costume on. And now when we show our real selves, they're like, yo, you not who I married? Who are you? Right? So listen, if you find yourself single at this moment, you should use this time to better yourself.
That's right.
How could you run from the ugly side of yourself, the shortcomings of yourself, but then want somebody else to fully embrace them? When you don't want to embrace them. When we run from it, right? We should not fear being alone, brothers and sisters, because if we do this, this causes you and I to jump into a relationship out of desperation. Like, I'm so afraid to being by myself that I just have to go force myself into a relationship. In anything we do out of desperation, think about when you buy a car. Think about when you buy a house. When you're doing it out of desperation, you know what we end up doing? We end up lowering our standard. Because we're such in a hurry. We overlook things. And even if we don't intentionally overlook things, we may unknowingly not investigate an area that we need to investigate. All because we're trying to get in a relationship out of desperation. And in the age of this social media, it's putting even more pressure on people. Because you're scrolling through your timeline and you're seeing everybody coupled up with their loved one. Vacation. Love goals. Marriage goals. Ride or die. And you're like, man, I want somebody that I can do a little pretty selfie with. And just to be able to do that, we overlook and don't do the necessary investigation in the beginning. And then we get somebody that adds to the pain and adds to the trauma that we already had.
That's right. Come on.
Right? See, we need to use this time by ourselves to really investigate aspects of our own personality. All of us know where our hang-ups are.
That's right.
All of us know where there's a gap between what we say and what we do. Is that right?
That's right.
All of us know that we have some issues. We have our own baggage, right? We should use this time by ourselves to heal. We should use this time for ourselves to even analyze how we view ourselves. Because how we view ourselves is going to determine what relationships we put ourselves in and what we tolerate. We should also use this time to examine our past relationships. Not only our relationships with those who we were romantically involved in, but also our relationship with our parents. Did you hear what I just said?
Yes, sir.
I was watching this show, I was watching an interview, I was watching a clip by Ayanna Van Zandt. And she was giving somebody advice about relationships. And she shared an aspect of her own life. She said that she had an auntie who she cared for dearly, but her auntie would always beat her and say negative things about her. And she said that that relationship shaped her and prepared her to enter into a relationship with a man that did the same thing. Now that expanded my understanding, because I'm thinking about, man, just examine a relationship between mother and child and father and child, but she said all relationships. And oftentimes we don't take that time to see how was our relationship or lack of relationship with our father or our mother, how has it shaped us today? But do you know that there are scientists who have done studies that they show that our relationship that we have with our parents as teenagers will influence the type of mate we will select? Think about that. And what happens, what is usually the atmosphere that exists between most teenagers and their parents during that time? It's really one of challenge, right? It's really one of rebellion and contention for the most part. So in my book, The Journey to Get the Love You Desire Begins With You, I share with the readers how I had to begin that type of process to heal myself. Because as a teenager, no one told me this. Just from what I observed, I saw that none of my uncles were with their wives. None of my aunties were with their husbands. And I said to myself, oh, marriage is not meant for my family because nobody is together, even my mother and even my father. And I began to start thinking that this is the way that God made my family. Now imagine how destructive that thought could be entering into a marriage. If I had not reformed that thought, I would have never even considered marriage. A brother told me that growing up, his mother would have him in a house that was filled with women who were prostitutes. And these women would spend hours of time talking about how they manipulated men. And he said it wasn't until his adulthood that he realized how that experience negatively shaped his view of women. Another brother told me he grew up in a home where he saw his sisters manipulate men. And his own sisters tainted his view toward women. But you enter into relationships with men and you never ask these questions. You just assume by what we see on the surface, and you end up being in a relationship with a man who's damn near spiritually filled with bullet holes. And you find yourself, one of the things I realize I've seen in women, that some women, a major mistake they make is trying to save men. Trying to fix us. We do it too. You and I cannot fix somebody else. The most that we can do is help them in the process of fixing themselves. Because if you're trying to fix someone and they don't believe that they need to be fixed, they then begin to start seeing you as being annoying. You trying to change me. And they are saying that because they don't think that nothing is wrong with them. At some point in a relationship, we have to be honest about what we see and realize that he is not ready. She is not ready. Doesn't mean that they are a bad person, but you are not the person for me.
That's right.
Because sometimes in trying to save someone, you end up drowning yourself. Right?
That's right.
So I had to sit down and I wrote on a sheet of paper all of the relationships I was in, you know, past those ones where you just pass the note and say, do you love me, sober? Yes, sir. Check the box for no. I wrote on all of the relationships I was in. I wrote down how they ended. And in the last column, I wrote down what was my role in them ending. What did I do? But guess what? Not only what did I do, what didn't I do? And then as I looked at that list, I had to go back through every aspect and ask myself, is the thoughts that produced this action still in you today? And if it was, I had to see where it came from and how I can get rid of it. And in that process, that helped me to heal. That helped me to see some of the things I did, where it came from. And a lot of the manipulation that I engaged in as a teenager as it relates to females came from me growing up in a home where my father was not present. And where my mother was present, but she was so bogged down trying to be the mother and the father that she could not be emotionally to me what I felt, what I needed a mother to be. So I engaged in activity that gave me praise amongst my peers. And the praise that I received from my male peers was praise for things, for behavior that was not pleasing in the eyesight of God. Because God does not like it when you and I play and use and manipulate females or women. So imagine you're getting attaboys, you're getting adoration, you're building a reputation off of that, you're being encouraged in sickness. But it wasn't until I engaged in a process of self-improvement that I said, man, that part of my reason for doing that is because I did not have a proper view of women. And it was the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad, as I began to start learning about the sacredness of the woman, that began to start cleaning that mindset up.
Yes, sir.
Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
In the book, I quote this article out of the Huffington Post, written by someone named Tyron Hillian. Listen to what she said. She opens up by saying this: love life got you down? It might be time to take a look back on your teenage years. Your relationship with your parents during adolescence has a profound effect on your romantic relationships later in life. Now, some people had good relationships with their fathers. But you and I are to look at this, and then we will be able to see how much this affects us, right? And she talks about how in her article they did a study on 2,900 people who were surveyed at different times of their lives. And it was discovered a direct link exists between participants and relationships and the quality of their relationship that they had with their parent. Look what the study says. This same study also suggested that teens that had a positive adolescent-parent relationship also had higher quality intimate relationships as adults. Teens that experienced rocky relationships with their parents had more problems later in life. The study concluded that's why it is important for people to identify past behaviors and avoid replicating them in their current and future relationships. So we have to examine that, right?
Yes, sir.
Then what we also need to examine as well is use this time to grow and study relationships, marriages, and the skills that we need. You hear people talk about how communication is very important to relationships. Many of us have said it, right?
Yes, sir.
But when was the last time you read a book about communication then? Who would stand in the middle of a street if you saw a 18-wheeler coming and you wouldn't try to get out the way? If you and I can Google and research and see the 9 major causes of divorces and failed marriages, then why don't you and I begin to start reading stuff to help us to avoid that? If money issues is a problem that causes marriages to end, why not go read a book on learning how to handle money? If poor communication, if lack of commitment, why do we wait to get in the boiling water, then we want to start working on it? And one of the reasons why that happened is because how we've been taught this mystery God. Well, we just think that something is going to solve all of our problems for us and we don't have to do anything to be proactive to solve them, right?
Yes, sir.
Also, while we're in this process of studying, we're talking about for those who are single. Use this time to begin to grow yourself and begin to think about what you want and what you don't want in a spouse.
Come on.
I mean, like literally write it down. And then ask yourself, why do I want this mate? Why do I want this quality? Right? Why do I want this in the male, in my husband? Why do I want this in my wife? Why don't I want this? Because if we write something down and we can't explain why we want it, then that means that somebody has put this thought in our head. I want somebody I want somebody that look like Morris Chestnut. But why though?
Come on.
I want somebody that's light skinned with long hair. But why? And there's nothing wrong with wanting that, but why? And if the why is influenced because of, that's a sign of the sickness of white folks poisoning us, that's a problem. Because now we enter into our marriage with colorism.
That's right.
We enter into our courtship or our relationship, I want somebody with wavy hair. Why?
Come on.
Because deep down inside, I believe that that's good hair. That's a sickness
Come on.
that many of us bring into our relationships. Right?
Yes, sir.
You ever go shop? Y'all go shopping, right?
Oh.
You go grocery. I know the sisters go shopping. One of the things I dislike when my wife asks me to go to the store, especially to find like some seasoning, I be in there for like 30 minutes. And it's some type of seasoning like even like the people in the store don't know. And I'm like, man, where's this thing at? Or even when I'm asked to go, when I want to go shopping for myself, I find that, and people who are quote unquote shopping experts, they say this, that you can minimize the amount of time that you stay in the store shopping if you have an idea what you want before you go in the store. And they tell you to write down what you want.
Listen.
Because when you write down what you want, it reduces the chances of you buying stuff that you don't need.
That's right.
Because you're looking at your budget, right?
Right.
If we can do that in grocery shopping, why can't we do that in our relationships?
Go ahead. Tell it.
As you sit here, do you have a list you can go and get right now where you have wrote down what qualities you want in a mate? And if not, why not? If you already have a list of what you want in a mate, you clearly see when this person walk up and they say something, now that don't fit my list.
No.
But if we don't have an idea what we want, we just settle for anything. Right?
Right.
Try buying a house and you don't have an idea what you want.
Oh.
The real estate agent would get very tired of it. And we didn't saw this house. What do you want? I don't really know. But if you have an idea what you want, your real estate agent will be able to give you a list of homes that fit what you say you want.
That's right.
Like, don't bring me to go see a 1-bedroom house when I'm looking for a 5-bedroom house.
That's right.
But you can eliminate that because of what? You know what you what?
One.
Can we do the same thing in relationships? Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
Use this time, brothers and sisters, to fall in love with yourself.
Read. That's right.
If you don't love you, how do you want somebody else to?
Come on.
Use this time to get your health in order.
That's right.
Use this time to work on your appearance. Because we'll be lying if we would tell you that physical appearance don't play a role.
Yes, sir.
Physical appearance plays a role, right?
That's right.
It's the first thing that even attracts us to someone.
Yes, sir.
So why not begin to start making yourself look attractive?
That's right.
Now, I'm not talking about going and spend no money to go get surgery done on
No,
it.
no.
Because that's false, right?
That's right. Cosmetic.
I'm not talking about go spend 100 grand like I'm about to say Black China, that's her name?
Yeah.
Rob Kardashian gave her $100,000 to go get her body into pre-pregnancy shape.
Oh,
Now imagine women who are pregnant seeing that. Man, Black China did it, and look at me. But you don't know that Black China's dropped 100 grand to do that. And we're chasing after something that's artificial,
That's right.
artificially assisted.
Right.
So work on ourselves. Use this time if you're in the nation to work on becoming some type of proficiency in how to eat to live.
Yes, sir.
Because most people are attracted by what they first see.
Come on.
Male and female.
Right.
'Cause I know sometimes you can get with brothers, they talk about sisters who overweight. Sisters don't want brothers who overweight as well.
That's right. Come on. That's right.
You think, I don't want the sister overweight. Well, what about you? When was the last time you saw your shoestrings? Right? So we have to keep it real. Listen to what the minister says. The process of marriage begins first with a natural attraction to some physical characteristic of the male and female which please each other. This natural attraction then leads to the desire to be closer to that person whom we are attracted to, right? Which leads to communication to get to know each other beyond the physical points of attraction. Just because you join the church or you join the mosque don't mean that you lose your swag.
Come on, man. Come on. Say that.
You just don't lose your, you just don't lose your flair of dressing nice.
Oh, indeed.
It mean that you don't wear cologne or perfume anymore. You don't get your hair cut.
Oh.
Yeah, like what that's at? Better keep that if you want to find something, right? Lastly, brothers and sisters who are single, who are watching this too, if you and I really invest in this process of self-improvement, it will help you and I get a clearer understanding of what we want and what can complement us. The Most High Elijah Muhammad taught us that Allah God self-created himself. And he said that after his self-creation, he studied himself and he realized what he needed to help him to address some things he was dealing with. And out of that, the Most High Elijah Muhammad said, out of that self-examination of the creator, of the originator, he produced a woman. And he produced a woman and designed her in a way where she helped solve the problem of being able to duplicate himself.
Come on.
He created someone that had the physical shape that pleased him.
Wow.
But he was able to do that by studying himself. So what could you and I find about what we wanted to make if you and I studied ourselves?
Right.
And the minister uses this analogy in mathematics using multiplication. He said if you want to have a relationship or a marriage that's on the level of 10 in quality. And he says, but if you are a 2, using the principle of multiplication, what do you need to multiply that 2 by? But you know what you need to multiply that 2 by because you know that you are 2. But what if you haven't done the necessary work where you don't know what you bring to the table? Then we end up multiplying it against something that may be too much or too little. You may say, man, you may say, I want somebody that's confident. But how does that confidence match with your lack of self-esteem? Because that confidence with your lack of self-esteem may produce a relationship where the confident person is domineering, where they're controlling. Well, they're so confident that then it becomes arrogant where they don't even want to hear what you say about how the house should be ran. But if we don't know where we are, we may get a little bit more than what we need. You get that point?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Now let's get to this courtship process, right? When you have the time, y'all okay?
Yes, sir.
When you have the time, go online or go to the library and research the mating habits of animals or insects. It's very fascinating. You will notice that every animal, if it's a small squirrel to the largest whale, whatever it may be, a small ant to the largest insect, they have a system by which they select their mate, right? They have a process by how they determine who they will mate with. So their process is intentional. That's talking about insects. That's talking about animals. There's a spider that's called the nursery web spider. And in order for the male to mate with the female, he has to go and find some item that she would like, and he wraps it in a very interesting looking gift. And he wraps it in like a wrapping. And he brings it to her. And she opens it up. And if she's pleased with what he brings to her, they mate. Think about that. That's a spider. He just don't roll up to her and just mate. There's something that he has to do first.
Come on with it.
Then there's a bird called a bowerbird. It's in the nature of this male bird that he knows that before he can mate with a female, he has to go and build a home. And they have video of this. The bird is building a home. And I think for some reason these birds they go and find like the same color. This one, he found blue. He found all types of pieces of blue, ribbon, blue, whatever. And you see the bird picking it up. He places the blue ribbon in, he backs up, he looks at it, then he gets it again, he moves it there, flies off, go get something else. And when he sits back and he looks at it and it looks right, he gives the call. And his female bird comes and she inspects it. She walks through it. And if she likes it, they mate. Now that's a spider and a bird. Now if these animals have a process by which they determine if they're going to make the person that they're going to mate with, what should you and I have? When we are called the glory of God. When we are God's best creation. Then you and I should have some type of system that you and I use to determine is this person worthy. But we don't. When I was teaching at John F. Kennedy, there was a young girl who was just very smart. She started to drop in her grades, and I pulled her to the side. She dropped in her grades and she was chasing after this boy in the hallway. And when I pulled her to the side and started asking, I'm like, yo, like by what method, what criteria are you using to select that this boy is the one you want? She said, by the movie, two can play that game. And that's what people are doing. You'll be amazed how many people are using literature and using music and using movies. That's where they're getting their criteria from.
Wow.
And wondering why we don't have any peace. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So in the Nation of Islam, this is why the courtship process is so significant. When we really understand the courtship process, it is the antidote, it is the medicine to the damage that white folks did us when they deprived us out of the science of mating.
Come on now.
The Most High Elijah Muhammad said they deprived us out of knowledge, the science of business, the science of warfare, and the science of mating. Right? The courtship process in the Nation of Islam lasts from 6 months to a year. And it allows a male and a female of the Nation of Islam the opportunity to examine, to question, to inspect, and gain knowledge of a person that will help him or her decide if this person is compatible enough that they want to marry. You know what I love about this? Is that it helps to eliminate a current problem that many people face in relationships today. You know what that problem is? We end up getting involved in people with relationships and we don't even see the end game.
Right.
We don't know where it's going. Very few of us will get in a car with one of our friends and they ask us to go take a ride and we don't ask them when we get in the car, when they ask us to take a ride, where are we going? Right?
Right, yes, sir.
Some of us tell our children, if your friends come pick you up, you need to find out what? Where they going.
Right. That's right.
Well, look at relationship. Right? Friendship. Courtship. Ship is a means or method of transportation.
Come on.
But how many of us enter in a relationship and we never ask this person, where are we going?
Come on. That's right.
What is your intent?
Right.
Are we just going to be friends? Okay, this is a friendship. Are we going to be a little bit more than friends? This is a relationship. So when you know where we're going, when they want to start trying to blend relationship with friendship, oh, let's stop. Like there's a meme that's going around on social media where there's a woman that said, "Oh, you want to do this, this?" No, that's the husband package. You only paid for the friends package, right? Well, you will be amazed at how many times we enter into a relationship and we just assume that this person wants to be in a committed relationship. We assume that one day they're going to want to marry us. But what makes it hard for us to ask where the end game is, what it is because we don't know what we want. And sometimes we know what we want, but we are so weak that we don't want to put it on them. Because if I say this, I'm going to run them away. But if you want to be married, listen, I'm looking to be in a relationship that's going to end in the marriage. If they say I'm not into that, then you're not for me. We going in the friend zone. But the friend zone should remain the friend zone. Right? You get the friendship package. You want something else, you got to upgrade the other part. But sometimes we get in a relationship where somebody tells us from the jump, listen, I'm not looking for something serious. I want to see other people. In the back of our mind, we like, I know he's saying this, but I'm going to win them over. I know she's saying this. She's just saying this because she hurt, but I'm going to show her I'm the one. And then when it gets to that destination, he said, listen, remember I told you I wasn't interested in a committed relationship. And when that happens, we cannot blame the person because we signed up for that tour. Right. But we need to ask people, what is your intent?
That's right.
And then we need to state what is our intent. Right. So with the process of the courtship, the outcome is already, we're trying to, at the end of this time period, to say if you and I are going to get married. Yep. Now, if you're not about that, then you don't need to try to court me. So what that does is it frees us up from getting emotionally involved and invested in somebody who doesn't want to be with us.
Come on.
Who just looking to have fun.
That's right.
And we know that happens a what? A lot. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now I know this process of courtship is not something that we are used to or accustomed to, right? Because in this process, it's premarital sex is forbidden. Now that should be just for those who claim faith. One time we were in a housing development, sister said, I ain't no Muslim because y'all can't have sex. I was like, if that's the case, then none of these brothers will have children. She was like, I'm a Baptist. But what she didn't understand her own faith. Because that's a requirement that God places on us. And we have to do some study, whether we believe in it or not, to say, why did he ask us to refrain from it? Why? Because sex is an intoxicant. Sex blinds us and impairs the decision-making process. So the minister says, this desire for sexual expression, if fulfilled before adequate knowledge of the individual is gained, clouds the mind and disallows us to make the best judgments that we are capable of making.
Come on.
Sometimes, as brothers, we give ourselves to women before we even know a lot about them.
That's right.
Right? Brother's not shaking their head on that. He says sexual expression is so powerful that it can cloud our minds from seeing anything but the pleasure we derive from that sexual expression. Then the participants do not enter into the marriage contract with a sober mind.
Come on, man.
And when we are drunk from the passion of the fulfillment of the pleasure, this impedes our ability to make a proper judgment. A drunk driver with faulty judgment can end up being a menace to society. Drunkenness impairs judgment. Therefore, we are asked not to drink and drive. Allah God, however, demands that we do not drink, for in all things good judgment and proper decisions are what bring blessings to our life. Good decisions lead to fulfillment of the aim of life, says Minister Farrakhan. He says most marriages are made on the basis of sex, and therefore when the sex drive diminishes, there's nothing of substance to hold the marriage together, but it was made from the physical rather than the spiritual desire.
That's right. That's right.
The overemphasis of sex in this world has made people believe that you can enjoy physical intimacy with somebody that you didn't have sex with before you were married.
Come on. Teach.
So you hear people say, that's like buying a car without driving it.
That's right.
If I came up to you today and said, for $2, you can buy this Maybach, you can buy this Benz, but you can't drive it, but you could buy it. Would you buy it?
No.
For $2? Brand new Benz?
Yes, sir.
You would drive it? Because you know, I don't have to drive it for all I know that's a Benz, is that right?
Right.
But they make people think that sex is not something that we grow to learn to improve with the person that we love. They've done studies. I know some of us may feel like we've had knockout sex when we were single. Bomb.com sex. Oh, Lord. Hail Mary sex. But do you know that they have done studies that, from the studies that they have done, they say that people who are married experience higher sexual fulfillment than those who aren't? You can't give yourself to a man fully the way you will want to when you know he hasn't given himself to you fully in a commitment. Because the sexual act comes out of the mind. And if you are secure here, you will give yourself fully to a man. So what we think is the bomb.com sex is not. It is nothing more beautiful than learning one another. Because you're engaging in an act with the same person over and over again, and you're learning what they like and what they dislike. You're making the adjustments, is that right?
That's right.
So, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says the following. He says this about courtship. He said in the word court, there's a point I'm going to come back and make. He says in the word courtship, there's the word court. And before I go into that, I'll tell you, this coming December, my wife and I will be married for 17 years. And it is the longest relationship I have ever been in committed to a woman. Only to a woman. In these 17 years, I have not given another woman my cell phone number. In these 17 years, I have not creeped out to some other city with another woman. In these 17 years, my wife has had my sole attention. And as I sit back and reflect on what made this different from previous relationships, is that I entered the relationship with a sober mind.
Yes, sir.
I entered the relationship not with this thing of I'm just going to lie and deceit to get what I want. I know I entered in knowing what I wanted of the woman. So I was focused. I didn't say I'm in a relationship with you, but I got somebody else calling me. I got a boo of an old flame who wants to get back. No, I was wholeheartedly committed to this process. And some of us can't go that way. Some of us are attracting people who are non-committed, who don't commit because we are not fully committed. Because physically we are here, but emotionally and spiritually we're still caught up on our ex. So now when we meet people, we're bringing people into our atmosphere who are not committed to us because we haven't addressed and separated and severed from that previous relationship spiritually, emotionally, or even physically.
Go ahead and teach.
Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
So the minister says this. We'll have to do a part 2. The minister says about, in the word, you have court in the word courtship. How many of you have been to court before?
Come on.
You go to court, you got to walk into that sucker serious, huh?
Right.
Especially if you facing some time.
Right. Tell the truth.
You about to go, you making go in that box. You walking that serious. You come dressed a certain way.
Right.
You know that you need to bring the facts to either prove your case or disprove their case. You're looking for facts. In court, they're not into what I felt and what somebody else said. In fact, they don't even take the information that comes from somebody else if they're not there as a witness.
That's right. Hearsay.
Right?
That's right.
You already you have to ask questions to determine the truth of somebody's testimony. Witnesses are brought forth and you need legal counsel, right?
That's right.
But that's the way we should enter into a courtship. Now, if you're not in the Nation of Islam, then you can still use these same principles to say, I'm going to enter into this relationship like this. But in this world of loose relationships and anything goes, a method like the courtship process is not valued and is looked at strange by those outside of the nation, and unfortunately by some of us even inside of the nation right now.
Watch out.
Where we're beginning to now make the courtship process, we're beginning to make the courtship process where it's like the Islamic way of saying I have a boyfriend and a girlfriend. And you know what's dangerous about that? What's dangerous about that is that we enter into the process not with absent of the critical mind. Think about when you just say boyfriend or girlfriend, don't you feel like the emotion coming up? You don't feel like you say boyfriend. It's my girlfriend. It's my boo.
That's right.
Don't you just you get all warm inside, huh? That emotion is setting in. And when we do that, what happens is we don't come in asking those necessary questions. We don't come in saying examine his or her relationship with their parents. We don't observe their habits or their spending habits. We just happy that they're bringing us to the movies, right? We don't ask the question to see what are their values and are they living in accord with their values. What is your value? Does your value and her value, do they intersect? Do they complement one another or do they clash? We don't spend time asking how they feel about children and how they feel about parenting, right? Or what are their future goals? Or even if you're in some religious organization, how serious are they about their faith? Because sometimes we just give people a pass because they say they are this. Or his bow tie is always straight, so I know he in the mosque. Her headpiece is always on point.
That's right.
Or he sings very loud in the choir on Sunday. And we just assume. And when we assume, we don't do the proper investigation, and we may end up marrying somebody who was pretending. Right? And so what begins to start happening with this, we begin to not do the necessary work, right? And so for people, if you're courting, like somebody asked me, do you have to make your courtship known on social media? Not if you don't want to.
No.
Right? That's your choice, right?
Right.
But the number one thing that we need to do is make sure that they're engaged in the process of self-improvement.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Self-improvement. So, and what we're seeing happening, some of us are circumventing this courtship process. Some of us are doing it our way. If you had to bake a cake and it had 12 steps, and out of the 12 steps, you only did 3 the exact way Betty Crocker said to do it. In the other 9, you put your spin on it. Should you be upset when that cake doesn't come out like you want it? But do you know that that happens? We don't follow the process, and when the process doesn't render the results, instead of saying, I didn't follow the process, we blame the process and say, man, that stuff don't work. No, it works. We just put our own spin on it, right? So, brothers and sisters, you have to, I would encourage you to take some time out to go and review that process of courtship. Let's get to this part. Now we want to talk about marriage. That's why everybody is here. All these people want to get married, right?
Yes,
Yeah. As married couples, one of our biggest issues is that causes problems is that we stop doing those things that cause us to grow to love one another.
Right.
And what helped us to decide that we want to marry this person. Complacency is one of the greatest threats to marriage. Like, we just begin to be complacent. Like, you don't worry about how you look when he comes home. He just needs to accept me the way that I am. Braids up, big old braid, full braids.
That's right.
It's like, yo, dang. But then your husband comes home and he just sees you anyway. But then when company comes, now all of a sudden, well, I gotta get ready, I gotta get nice. And he looking back like, well, damn, what about me? I pay the bills in here.
Come on. That's it.
Complacency. We used to always buy flowers, send a little sweet text messages, get a little favorite things, take her out to the movies. Now after a while, man, it's 5 years in the game. I done did that. I ain't doing that anymore. Then the little arguments begin to start coming. And then we're not, that spirit of love doesn't exist in the marriage anymore because we stopped doing the things that helped us to fall in love with one another.
Come on now.
Right? Remember, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that love in the Quran is duty. So that means that duty is that which builds and sustains and develops and nurtures love in our marriage. So if we stop being dutiful, then we'll stop making deposits into his or her love tank, right? And so some people say that we say, all you have to do is just be dutiful to God. And if you're dutiful to God, then they should love you. But do you know part of our being dutiful to our spouse is part of our duty to be dutiful to God?
Come on, man. Go ahead and teach.
We're not being dutiful to Allah or being dutiful to God when we're neglecting our spouse. How can we say that we're being dutiful to God and neglecting the one person that has entered the marriage that is a part of the process to make us one with God?
Go ahead. Come on, man.
But we're being dutiful to Allah. We're fooling ourselves. So in the book of Ephesians, listen to how it starts off. It says, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as you do to the Lord. And then I'm not going to read the whole scripture. It goes further and it tells husbands to do the same thing. There is no mystery, God. If you and I don't work on our marriages and be intentional in our development and nurturing of it, don't be surprised when they fail.
Come on.
Don't be surprised when he or her begins to start looking for somebody else outside of the home. Y'all all right?
Yes, sir.
The other thing, and I'm gonna stop on the marriage part. The other thing that we need to do to ensure the success of our marriage is to become knowledgeable of our mate's needs. Right. And not only become knowledgeable of their needs, but also learn how to satisfy their needs. Right? And if we don't know what their need is, what's the problem with asking?
Come on now. Right.
Instead of just guessing. It's a simple conversation. It's a simple text message. DM. Inbox. What are your needs? Can you list your top 10 needs that you need from me? And can you tell me some ways that I can satisfy them? Right? Simple, right?
Yes, sir.
But some of us don't even do that. Then what we need to do is study the nature of man and woman. Yo, we're different. And if you and I keep thinking that we're the same, we're going to fail. Men and women are different. And the problem is oftentimes we try to get them to respond to problems the way we want them to, or the way we would, and they try to get us to respond to problems the way they would. And that's the problem. There's an article that talks about one of the reasons why our problems that we have when we have friction with one another, why we may not be able to get over differences that we have. And can I read it to you all?
Yes, sir.
Listen to what it says. Showing emotional commitment is the best way for couples to make up after arguments. According to a new study, but surprise, surprise, the researchers found that men and women tend to do this differently and expect different things from each other. Like we have different ways how we want you all to make up after you may have done us something wrong, right?
All right.
One study showed this. The study published in Evolution of Psychological Science found that women appreciated when male partners spend time with them after a conflict and ask forgiveness, remorse, and even shed a few tears. Is that right, sis? Y'all gotta say something. We're trying to get y'all with that. Let me read that again. It says women, right, appreciated when male partners spend time with them after a conflict, ask forgiveness, or show remorse, or even shed a few tears. Most of us as men, we feel like once we say we apologize, it's keep it moving. But they want us to spend time with them, show remorse, get all watery-eyed. But listen to what it says about men. Men, on the other hand, consider kind gestures and sexual favors as the best way to apologize.
Wow.
Is that true? Come on, y'all don't get all quiet now. Just let me read that thing. Men, on the other hand, y'all getting all shy now. Consider kind gestures and sexual favors. Go read the study. But the point I'm bringing out is showing that how we have different expectations on how to handle the same problem. Right. And that's just in that one example, right? So we need to know these things. We need to know what needs need to be satisfied, and we also need to know what causes us to not want to satisfy our spouse's needs. Sometimes it's arrogance. What do I mean by that? We become so arrogant that we want to satisfy his need or her need the way we think it should be done. If she tells you, I like my foot rubbed this way, and you say, I'm going to do it my way. If she said, I like you to rub my feet. I like you to give me a massage. When you do that, I feel valued. I feel loved. And we say, no, the way I'm going to handle that, I'm going to send you to just go get a massage. And we like, you wanted a massage, but you missed the point. Who did she say she wanted to do the massage? You. You see, we want to satisfy the need our way. Same thing. He may have a need. He may say, for my birthday or whatever, don't buy me all this other stuff. Just buy me some shoes and buy me a suit. And we say, you say, no, the way I'm going to do it, I'm just going to take you out to eat. And we wonder why we're missing each other. Because we want to say, no, I'm going to do it my way. Then the second thing that ends up happening is this. Some of us are so caught up in our past pain that we can't get to say, we're like, man, you did me wrong. I ain't worrying about your need because you hurt me, right? See, that's a time where we have to have this talk and be able to heal. Then the other thing is we get like this. Well, he ain't doing it for me. I ain't doing it for him. So birthdays begin to be a tick for tat. Well, all he did was bring me out to eat for my birthday. Guess what's going to happen to him? It's a tit for tat, right? And sometimes, brothers and sisters, we're not able to satisfy one another's needs because we have done a horrible job of articulating what we need. We want everybody to be mind readers. She should know this. He should know that. Or if I tell him, it's going to cheat the experience. If I tell her, it's going to cheat the experience. But guess what? If you don't tell him, you ain't going to have no experience. So why not tell him, right? So in closing, brothers and sisters, as married couples, we must continue to grow and develop the skills that will help us to handle the inherent difficulty that comes with marriage. Listen to me. I don't care if it was two blind people in wheelchairs. If they married, they're going to have difficulty. No matter what your race is, no matter what your economic situation is, no matter what your health is, what even your mental health is, marriage is going to be difficult.
That's right.
God set it up that way because it's a way to prove our vows that we said before him. That's the difference between a promise and a vow. You make a promise to a person, you make a vow to God. So we take vows where we say through sickness or health, rich or poor, and you better believe we're going to be tried.
That's right.
You look through your years of your marriage, you were tried on those areas. Some of us were successful, some of us what? We failed, right? And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said the following. He said that marriage is second in difficulty only to the self-creation of God. And lastly, we have to remember this when we go through these difficulties. We have to remember that it's only a moment, but it begins to be a permanent stop on this journey if you and I don't address it. A lot of times we just want to use sex to cover, we just want to use sex as a band-aid to make up for a dispute. And we never have a sit down and say where the other person can recognize what they did, why they did it, and how it impacted you. And what happens is when we don't do that, guess what happens with that problem? It keeps happening over and over and over again. No, we have to have this discussion. Somebody has to realize that what they did or what they said, how it impacted us, and we have to say, I won't do it again, all right? And inshallah, what we'll do on the next one, we'll pick up on this part dealing with marriage. So I pray that you all found this to be helpful and to be beneficial. All praises due to Allah. So thank you all.